Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. The topics discussed in this podcast will reflect my opinions and are not in any way to be regarded as medical advice. Late President Dwight D. Eisenhower, in a very famous speech, spoke about the risk of the rise of the military-industrial complex. This is about, I think, in 1961, just when he was finishing up before handing over to the late J.F. Kennedy. And the term essentially was warning of an increase in military activity, but in particular that there was money to be made industrially through the military. And obviously, defence spending is important, but again, it also does make money for people, and there are arguments about, is it about the chicken and the egg? But again, not going to enter into commentary on defence spending other than to say that it's necessary, but like everything, needs to be done the right way. But that term has been coined in a few different ways, and one is the medical industrial complex, which essentially means that the medical industry is quite good at making work for itself. And one of the best ways that it makes work by itself is changing disease definitions. So if we have a normal cholesterol defined as 6.5, which was in the late 80s when I started in medicine, then if your cholesterol was under 6.5, then you didn't have any problems according to the definition. And then it was lowered to 6, and then to 5.5, and then to 5.0. Now, every time you lower thresholds, literally overnight, you reclassify a whole lot of people who yesterday had no particular problem and no need of any medical treatment, intervention or tablets, and today they do. Now, they haven't changed overnight. It's the definition that's changed. And we've seen thresholds lowered with diabetes, and we've seen thresholds lowered with blood pressure. And again, every time you do this, you do create more potential patients. And that's, could be argued that that's good for business. And I'm not saying that it's done for those reasons, but let's be honest, that is the end effect. New obesity definition raises the number who have it. About 1 in 5 people considered overweight based on the BMI alone would be classified as having obesity based on European Association for the Study of Obesity's new framework. Really? The BMI, body mass index, which is your weight in kilograms divided by the square of your height in meters, so your height, say 1.8 meters, so 1.8 by 1.8. If you're 80 kilograms, 80 divided by that, is a useless indicator of health. Useless. It was developed initially by actuarials in the 1800s, and by the way, at that time, people were a lot smaller, as some form of statistical tool. That was it. It is not useful in an individual setting. You go to any sports team, so whether it's in Australia, the AFL or the NRL or the A-League or in America, the hockey league or basketball league or American football, gridiron league, NFL, every player in all of those leagues, and this is right around the world, I don't know, I'm not familiar with all the leagues in all countries, they're all going to be technically overweight or even obese. Arnold Schwarzenegger was famously obese when he won the Mr. Olympia. Why? Because he's got a lot of muscle, and his weight is divided by the square of his height, puts him in that range. And by the way, in the late 80s, the cutoff for overweight was lowered from 27.5 on the BMI to 25. So again, immediately we've got more people who can be classified as overweight. And the cutoff for obese is 30. A lot of work has actually been done that you don't hear about, which shows that there is no difference in all-cause mortality up to a BMI of 30. Now, yes, if you are carrying significant amounts of excess weight, there are going to be some problems. Yes, your risks of heart disease, of stroke, of some forms of cancer does go up, and it obviously impacts joints as well. and people can have higher rates of low back pain, arthritis in their hips and knees. But that's not from carrying just a couple of spare kilos. And if you say, well, where is the line drawn? There isn't an absolute line on a statistical measure for every single person on the planet. Some people, in inverted commas, carry it better than others. And the other issue, and this is really important as we're going with this, is it takes no account of body habitus. There's a big difference between being muscle set and carrying a lot of excess fat. So the same person at the same weight, if they've got a lower percentage body fat, are in a very different situation health-wise. And that's not to say that getting too big with muscle, and particularly doing that through use of substances that people shouldn't be using, isn't good either. Everything can be taken too far, obviously. But the idea that a whole lot of people who are classified as overweight have a problem. I mean, look, maybe you want to lose a few kilos and, you think you're going to look better at the beach. Fine, great. That's okay. But we know that if you're, again, up to, and I know, notwithstanding what I've said, that the BMI is not a useful indicator, but for these purposes, we'll continue to discuss it in that context, that up to 30, yes, if you lost some kilos, look, there might be advantages for you in that. Maybe that's going to help if you've got low back pain. Maybe you feel a little bit better. Maybe your perception is you look a bit better. Maybe you've got a target to get back into your clothes that you wore a few years ago. All of which is fine. But none of which means you're going to live any longer. 3/4, and you hear these statistics about, the obesity crisis and the obesogenic environment. Garbage term, anyway. Because it's all good for the gravy train and the public health and industrial complex, which then goes to government and says we need more money for our programs that fail continuously. And let's put some more taxes on different foods and send this money to us. The medical/public health industrial complex. And all the while, what we've seen since they got involved and started telling people what to eat, which is the low-fat dietary guidelines, we've spoken about that lots of times. You can revisit some of the podcasts. The situation has got worse, not better. And so what do? Continuously double down. But 3/4 of people who are classed as being overweight or obese are actually just a bit overweight. So when they say, 70% of the population has an issue with weight, it's actually only 1/4 of that has any issue of any significance. So, we're talking about sort of 15% of the population. And look, that's not ideal. And we want to do what we can to help those people. And obviously there are a number of options, including, changing your eating patterns. And there are more options than that as well, particularly to get people kick-started. But it's much less of a headline and much less of a drama if it's 15% than if it's 65 to 70%. And maybe governments wouldn't be so keen to throw money at big public health if it was actually only 15% rather than 70%. And it doesn't sound like a crisis at that level either. So reclassifying even more people who are slightly overweight as obese is really just grist to the mill of the public health/medical industrial complex. Oh, the problem's greater than we thought. Oh, we need more money. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, ban this. Oh, tax that. It's pathetic. Genuinely pathetic. This is people in ivory towers with abacuses just playing with data and statistics. And looking to come out with data and statistics that supports their ideology and ultimately, looks to support their hip pockets. I mean, seriously. At least at the end of this, there is a tiny, tiny ray of hopes. Better methods are needed. Yeah, they are. And we have a better method at the moment. One of it's fairly simple. It's a tape measure. And you can do your waist-hip ratio, measure your circumference around your hips and around your waist at the narrowest point, And for women, it should be ideally below 0.85, and for men, 0.9 or below. And that tells you a lot more than the BMI does, or even the kitchen scales. That tells you much more about your body habitus. But one can also measure body fat, and there are machines that do that, and you can get them in some of the gyms. And, what's the right amount of body fat? Look, again, it's going to differ for different people. And yes, women will typically have a slightly higher percentage body fat than males, because I know it's not popular to say it these days, but, people are different, and there are differences between the two sexes. So it's not that difficult to do, but nobody wants to do it because I think we know the reason why. We're going to find that it's not a crisis, and that, yes, it is a problem, and it's a problem for those people, and we should be doing as best we can to assist those people, and they should also be doing as best they can to assist themselves. But it ceases to be some sort of crisis demanding government action and money. Dearie me. To end on a positive, and I think it's always good to end on a positive, always, always, always comes back to you as an individual. Statistics have their role, data has its uses, but it comes back to the individual. And in terms of your own weight and whatever your particular view of it and what you want to do about it, it's what you put into your mouth and how much or how little you move your body. And if there's a need to change what you put into your mouth, then you can change the types of foods and you can change the amount of food. And you can do some more exercise. And if you have some restrictions, then there are workarounds for that. For people who do have arthritic problems, often water-based exercise is easier than land-based. You're not putting your body's weight through your joints. And, things like elliptors or some of those bikes where you're sitting down, again, can be useful. So there's always ways. And look, there are some people where it is going to be more difficult. And, again, that is just the nature of life. But for most people, you can look at starting some form of exercise. And if you haven't done much for a while, obviously start at a level that is manageable for you. Don't try to overdo it the first day. That's not going to be a good idea. It's not going to end well. So start at a low level, maybe build it up slowly. Get a trainer to assist you, or an exercise physiologist if you need be. Again, I'm not offering any advice. These are just suggestions as to finding out for you what's the best way to work for you. And in terms of what you eat, again, we've spoken about this lots of times, but foods that until fairly recently were moving around or growing somewhere, foods that you'd have to throw out or freeze next week if you don't eat them. And drink mainly water. It's not difficult. People did manage it for hundreds of years. And yes, they didn't live as long, but it wasn't because of carrying too much weight. So no, we don't need new definitions to reclassify people who weren't obese yesterday as obese today. No, we don't need taxes and bans. We need to give people useful information. That'd be a first for governments. Useful information. And we need really to get the message through to people that you are responsible and have control over how you live your life, and the power is actually in your hands. All you have to do is activate it. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, share, and consider subscribing. Tell your friends. If there are topics you'd like to see covered, be in touch through the chat or email info@drjoe.net.au. We'll be uploading new content each Monday, and soon we'll be putting these videos out on X. You can follow me there at Dr. Joe's DIY Help.